All right, everyone, welcome to the Resilient Responder Podcast, brought to you by First Responder Coaching. I'm your host, Keith Hanks. Today with me, I have Jennifer Anderson, founder and CEO of First Responder Coaching, or FRC, as we will reference it for this episode. So, as a pilot episode, I just want to kind of let everyone know what the theme is here. Obviously, we're going to cater to the men and women of the first responder world, along with their families, spouses, children, yada yada. As time goes on, we'll probably have guests that may not be responders. They may be culturally competent counselors, therapists, resources, whatnot. But today's episode, we're going to bring Jen on, and she's going to talk about sort of why FRC is FRC and what our hopes and dreams are with this podcast. So, with that, I'll turn it over to you, Jen.
Hi, Keith. Thank you for having me be on the first ever FRC podcast.
First ever.
So exciting. Jen Anderson. I am the founder, CEO of First Responder Coaching. Very long story short, my husband was in policing for 15 years and suffered a mental health break back in 2017 that led to hospitalization in 2018. And around that time, I didn't have any access to resources that would support me as a spouse moving through the challenges of his mental health concerns. So I turned to coaching as a way to identify where I was then in those moments of structuring our family, rebuilding the foundation of our family, rebuilding our financial future, those types of pieces. And through a 12-week coach course, I learned a lot about who I needed to be to help us move through that time. As my husband was getting better and coming home after his hospitalization, I was the wife, the woman, the mom that I needed to be to help us maintain our relationship moving forward. So shortly after, I was approached and asked if I was interested in learning how to coach. I went through my own 9-month coach certification course. And then Valentine's Day of 2021, I launched Blue Line Coaching. Blue Line Coaching was a way for me to connect to law enforcement spouses in particular. I was partnered with the National Police Wives Association for a little while. And through that connection, I started coaching some Capitol Police spouses, and they became very interested in learning more about coaching. I went back to the gentleman who trained me, and we launched a coach certification class last April, May. And since then, realizing that trauma is something that all of our first responders experience and bring home, we decided to move into first responder coaching about a year and a little bit ago now. So it's been quite a ride this last year and a half here, building out this coaching opportunity for all of our first responder community.
It has been a roller coaster, that's for sure. And it's weird. I think a lot of people listening would probably pick up on this. So 2015 is a weird year for a lot of first responders. It was about a year and a half after the marathon bombing, where a lot of first responders really started showing a lot of signs of mental breaks and compassion fatigue, and ultimately PTSD. And I know for me, and it's and I obviously know your husband's story. For me and several other responders that I work with regularly, 2015 was that year for us. It was the year that we all discovered that we weren't doing well. We weren't coping well. We weren't ready for what this job was doing to us.
Correct.
So to kind of build into that, part of my story and why we're doing this, why me and Jen have partnered to do this podcast through First Responder Coaching, is because I was a first responder. For 21 years, I was a firefighter and an EMT. And I thought I had it. I was the tough guy. I was, suck it up, buttercup, like so many other guys and women on the job. And 2015 proved I couldn't do it anymore. And by 2017, I had to leave the job. And years go on, I started doing a lot of different things. And me and Jen met in the fall of 2021 through one of the first responder groups that we both belong to on Facebook. And I got to discover what coaching was. And with that, Jen, I know what coaching is, obviously. Leading into the story, I was going to tell people that I obviously became a certified coach after being coached by you for a while. And then obviously I became the director of business development, and then now the director of promotions here at FRC. Can you explain to people maybe there where some confusion may be with what coaching really is. If you could elaborate on that.
Yeah, thank you, Keith. So yeah, coaching is a very different modality in a number of ways. Typically, you go see a counselor or a therapist because they are the expert in their field. They have the information that you are seeking to help you move through a challenging part of your life. In coaching, you are the expert in your own life. So coaching is really about this 80-20 rule. 80% of the time, we are listening. We train our coaches to listen on a various number of levels to what's being said, what's not being said, how you're saying the things that you're saying, body language, intonation, all of those pieces. And through listening, we are able to identify characteristics and understand where our person is, and then ask them some really powerful questions that help them move through again, areas of their life that they might not have a level of satisfaction that they want. So the difference is again, you are the expert in your own life. And so coaches will ask questions like, what, you're great right now. What are some of the things that you're doing right now to help with your stress management, with your overall well-being? So when trauma occurs on the job, because we know it will,
Mm-hmm.
what are some of those strategies that are working really well for you right now that you'll be able to use as you move through trauma, as you move through a critical incident, as you move through a bump in the road with your marriage? So that way we can help support this first responder community in positive way. They can have positive experiences and positive outcomes, building that resilience, right? Not just our coping skills, but the resilience needed to have longevity in the career, advancement in the career, successful relationships, successful financial relationships. All of those pieces are an intricate part of what coaching is about.
It's so true because, a lot of people, I know for me, I had been in therapy and whatnot since I was a kid. And, you couple 34, 35 years of therapy, and then you go into a situation as I did with you have a different perspective given to you through coaching. And it's sort of like the best way I kind of describe people, it's like almost playing dodgeball by yourself. So you go to a therapist and they're kind of like, you throw things at them and they throw it right back to you. They're like, okay, so this is what we need to do. I found with coaching, it's almost like you are, like you said, you're the expert, right? And so your coaching partner, the coach in this relationship is sort of they're like, okay, that's great that you want to work on this. What are you going to do to do so? And that's just an example of how this is. But instead of having someone else give you these answers, it gives you the power. And as a responder, we are very go doers. We are very instant gratification sort of people, and to be able to have that power given back to that person is huge. It's huge. It's very gratifying, and because of that, in my case, they that just turned into a domino effect with what I was able to do with pushing forward and doing things and utilizing what I learned in coaching in therapy. And
Yeah.
and so with that, specifically at FRC, what does coaching look like at FRC? What sets FRC above the rest?
Great question. What makes FRC so special is that obviously a number of things, but not only do we offer a specific coach certification course for all of the coaches within FRC, but all of those coaches are within the first responder community,
Mm.
period. So when we have conversations about going to a therapist or speaking to someone, oftentimes they are not culturally competent, right? That's a huge buzzword right now. To have someone who's culturally competent in the ways that the first responder world exists is a huge priority for FRC. We know that in order to break through that tough outer shell of our first responder, we need to have connection. We need to have understanding of what life is like on the job and for their family members too. And so we very much pride ourselves on all being connected to our first responder community in that way. So that's very special, important to us.
It is, and obviously, I can't be, I'm biased, I guess, in a way because I'm part of this group, this family, and I know the people who are involved. And I know the spouses that are coaches and the spouses that are in admin spots within FRC, and these are people who are very vested in this cause, people who have gone through their own their own trauma because of either if they're the responder or their spouse is the responder. They've gone through,
Mm.
um, what it looks like to have to try to find someone who, you don't have to explain what it's like that it's okay that they came home late for dinner, for the third night that week, or yet it was another Christmas they weren't home. A lot of unfortunately uncompetent counselors, when it comes to this culture, don't understand that. So what do you mean you were home for Christmas, or what
Thank
do you
you.
mean that he or she had to work a double, and
Right.
if you didn't find out till 4 hours into a shift, they don't get that. So having a group of people who are in an organization, um, and this actually leads me into another question, whose mission is to help these first responders and their spouses, is huge because you don't find it a lot. Um, so
Yeah.
having said that, what is FRC's mission statement? What is their overall, I guess, goal, when it comes to the first responder world?
Great. Our mission is really about accessibility. It's about building accessibility to a different modality that is changing the culture, changing the environment of our first responder community. So, what that really means is, yeah, you alluded to it before, the suck it up, buttercup mentality, or the brush it off, or, let's go for beer after the shift mentality is not where we need to continue to focus our attention. What needs to happen is this layering of modalities within departments, within our first responder world, to provide extra support, a network even, of support of beginning, middle, during trauma, after trauma, into retirement. What do all of these stages of our first responder world look like? And having the accessibility of coaching as one of those modalities is very important to FRC.
And it's great that you bring up accessibility and resources and stuff like that. One of the things, and I'm sure Jen will elaborate a little bit more on this, that we actually did recently is, FRC actually co-hosted a conference with the New Hampshire Fire Academy. And one of the biggest things, for myself, coming from the job being the responder, was that it's one thing to be someone who's talking about something and not necessarily being the responder, but to have a group of people who are getting up there and sharing their stories. Jen, myself, and the rest of the admin team felt it was very important to, um, get out more outside of just the coaching part of the business, and to really, kind of spread our wings and get our hands out into other parts. Jen, when we decided to do that, how did that feel? How did that feel to start to undertake other things that weren't just coaching individuals?
Well, thanks to you, dear. No, really. It was a scary process at first to think about prospect. Because again, one of the things I feel very strongly about is that I don't have all of the answers. I don't know exactly how this is going to go. I don't know what the needs are of the entire community. And so to be building a network and building an admin team that brings ideas to us and says, hey, I think this would be a great idea. What are your thoughts? And I say, Keith, you want to run our first FRC mental health symposium? Let's do it. Was so gratifying. It was such an amazing opportunity to share modalities. And that was another piece that I think is important to touch upon, that coaching, in my opinion, the proactive approach to mental health and wellness throughout, a first responder's life, career and otherwise, and personal. But there isn't a one size fits all
Right.
modality. We have to have conversations, top down, bottom up, left and right, about what's working for you as an individual. And that's what coaching can help elucidate. That's illuminates, right? Those are the things that we can have the conversations in coaching to say what's working for you, what's not working for you, and how can we navigate the areas that are working in order to, again, help you have a successful and satisfied life. So having that conference was just such a pleasure, such an honor, to have all those people together in one room talking about the modalities that worked for them, and
Right.
having those people leave with a sense of, okay, now I know that there is help out there. I know that there's different help out there. And I know where I can go to access it, as we just mentioned, right? Going back to the accessibility piece. I have resources I can access to get the help I need. And that was powerful.
Yeah, for sure. And to build on the proactive, it's great that you just brought up, the proactive part of this. Um, why is being proactive so important in the first responder community, in your words?
As a first responder spouse, I watched from the sidelines as my husband's mental health deteriorated for years.
Hmm.
For years. I couldn't do anything about it. I couldn't stop the train, right? The amount of weight that was put on his shoulders each and every day on the job, each time he put that uniform on, was so heavy. And to see how it was impacting him and shaping who he was and who he became, that's hard to sit and not do anything about.
Right.
So we can start having some conversations within the community about what those things look like. And again, different for everyone. Absolutely different for everyone. Maybe that's a topic for another podcast soon. What does that look like? But to not know what to do, what to say, how to respond to those differences was so tragic. So tragic. So for me, it's incredibly important to discuss coaching as the proactive piece, because we shouldn't just be sitting around waiting until crisis hits, right? Again, vivid images of my husband who was incapable of contracting for safety in a chair at a partial program, sobbing. We shouldn't have had to get to that point. We should not have had to get to that point. So if I can, if FRC can change the world, we can change the world into saying, here's an approach that can prevent people from getting to that point of just devastation. I'm going to do whatever it takes. FRC is going to do whatever it takes to change that mentality.
And that's a huge piece because, any first responder who acknowledges that mental health is a thing and that PTSD is a thing and the job affects them will tell you that if they were given the tools beginning of the career, 5 years into the career, on how to navigate this, how to have these conversations with not even just their family, but just like the admins at work, their captains, their leadership. If they were able to have these conversations to know what to do when the job started affecting you, maybe we wouldn't be getting to a point of crisis, because as you alluded to earlier, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And we're not trying to get rid of that. I think anyone who has any sort of part in the first responder mental health portion of what's going on, with the stigma and everything else, I don't think anyone's trying to take away the toughness of the job or the bad things happening. It's impossible. You're not going to do that.
Yes.
But I think, as most of us at FRC are very much like-minded, I think the idea of being proactive is sort of that, hey, let's talk about it before it becomes this issue. Because once it's an issue, things have already spiraled and you're now starting to pick up pieces that you may not be able to put back together.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's literally critical. It's critical to saving lives and saving family. Like, you have to have the space for the conversations before tragedy hits to know. I mean, we talk about the smoke detector versus sprinkler system.
Yep.
Right? Yep. We have to start putting in more smoke detector like modalities, so we aren't just relying on, and forgive me again, there are phenomenal inpatient, outpatient programs. There are some extraordinary therapy, modalities. EMDR, I think, personally saved my husband's life. Phenomenal modalities. So when crisis occurs, there are tools out there that can be utilized. But again, why are we waiting? Why are we waiting? We shouldn't be waiting.
It's such a stubborn culture. And a lot of a lot of that stems from, this is my opinion, folks. A lot of that stuff stems from the testosterone driven history of it, where it was all men. And for a long time, and at least the law enforcement and firefighting end of this, it was an unwanted job. It was a job that wasn't wanted by most people in society. So the lower class of it ended up doing it, and you weren't allowed to talk about it. And that sort of became very traditional in both of those fields, and it just spiraled. It spiraled to the other ones, and I think, being proactive in this job. I mean, we're proactive for the most part. We're not as good as we could be, but we're proactive with physical health. Why aren't we doing this with how the job is going to affect us? Because it's going to,
Thank you.
one way or the other.
Yeah.
You brought up a good point, though, when it comes to, this proactive piece of it. This kind of, segues into the next question I sort of have, and that's, what can be worked on during a coaching session that can be applied to a responder's or spouse's personal or professional life? What can they do that would help those areas?
So our basic opening conversation with someone who's coming into a coaching session is about areas of satisfaction in their life. We have hundreds of tools and strategies to look at, career obviously being a top priority for many of our first responders, but what about your leisure and fun time? What are you doing for your hobbies? Is there satisfaction in that area of your life? Again, financial satisfaction, relationship satisfaction, family life satisfaction, all of those areas come together. Maybe it's faith-based satisfaction. We've got a really great community of faith-based coaches as well. So to have conversations about the level of satisfaction in all areas of life is the first part of what we do as coaches in a coaching relationship, is a great indicator of where we need to move through within our coaching sessions. So literally any aspect of life can be worked on, can be moved through using the coaching modality. Does that answer the question?
It does. And to build on that, one of the things I like to add when I'm ever in a conversation about, coaching and whatnot, that people sometimes ask is, so yeah, coaching can be an independent thing, but then coaching can feed into so many of the modalities that are out there. And like I had said earlier on, I use it to better approach, my own therapy, my one-on-one therapy. I mean, these days, my therapy, each session is more, we utilize that time better than I've ever used therapy in the past, because I've learned how to communicate what I need to communicate and set goals and have a different perspective, that during that therapy, I'm able to use the coaching part beyond just the coaching helping with certain things. The coaching can help other modalities.
Yeah, I think that's great. And again, the practical application, that's exactly what you're mentioning, right?
Yep.
We're going to our therapist or counselor and they're giving you ideas and tools and strategies. That's great. But then how do you apply them practically to your daily, ins and outs of your life? So absolutely working with a counselor, and a coach is just pinnacle. That's awesome. Thank you for pointing that out.
It's important, because I think, leading to the next part here, I think it's important for people to try to figure out and hear and sort of discover, probably on their own, how coaching can fit in their life. And, with that, I have, in my mind, I have the answer to this, in my opinion. But what would be your answer to what coaching's role is in regards to, first responder mental health and wellness, specifically beyond the proactive piece? If you had to give an answer to that, what would you think that would be?
I think coaching's role is, again, the creation of space. I feel very strongly that as we go through life, we have challenging moments that we need to process. And if we're not creating space for the ability for the brain to take a moment and say, hold up, like that was a rough situation, or that was a learning experience, or don't do that again, or no, do that again, then we're not growing in a way that we're not thriving in a way that we could be, I guess would be the way to put it, right? In terms of the practical application of coaching, half hour, 45 minutes a week will do you wonders. Absolutely do you wonders. And it might not sound like a lot. You're like, oh, half hour. Yeah, a half an hour of a coaching session a week works wonders. It's the creation of space for you to share those ideas, share those moments, reflect on them, be given observing a different point of view about them that helps you to navigate all areas of your life. So it is recommended, our recommendation of half hour to 45 minutes minimum per week for a solid 3 months to see these changes, to see what it is that you're moving through. But just the creation of space,
right,
I think, is necessary.
I think it's that creation of space is important. It's vitally important, because a lot of times in the first responder world, and as a law enforcement spouse, you'll understand this. The responder themselves may get the help, right? They may go out and then they're getting whatever modality, but it's not coming back home. It's not what they're doing. Isn't the work's not being brought home to the relationship, to the children, to the family, to whatever it is. And that's what I feel is a really nice thing with coaching, is that the entire first responder family tree, if you will, can benefit from this, and it can open up those lines of communications, give them that space, as you said, to flourish and to better their lives, personally, which will eventually obviously lead to better professional development.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I think we just don't do that enough, right? We have lots of conversations about self-care and taking a moment and smelling the rose, stop and smell the roses. How often are we scrolling through a Facebook feed and see stop and smell the roses kind of messages, and we're like, yep, we should be doing that, but yet we still scroll, right? So to purposefully create that space is, I think, again, moving forward, something we need to be doing or actively doing, and not just, again, for the first responder, as you just said, but the entire community. So the spouses, the family members, of the teenagers. Think of the teenagers being impacted, the relationships between our first responders and our children. What does that look like, and how can we support that too by creation of space? So
it's so important. It's so important. And with that, let's go into what's happening now at FRC. Let's talk about some of the things we're working on. What is when it comes to how FRC can be utilized by responders, their spouses, departments, organizations, how is that happening now at first responder coaching?
Oh boy. It has been, again, a whirlwind of a year, and what's really been phenomenal is the adjustments, the tweaks that we've been able to make in this last year about again, our one-on-one coaching partnership, individuals who are coming to FRC recognizing that they need that space, they need that network, they need some conversation. And so that's been going really well. And then to move into some conversations within departments, this has been a really cool opportunity for FRC as we've created our own network of coaches. We're up to 40 plus coaches here at FRC. And what we're now doing is boots on the ground, going into departments, presenting what coaching looks like to top down, bottom up, and having a really frank conversation about what coaching can do for them in their departments. And then from there, departments and organizations can have the opportunity to purchase this coaching service on their own and say, hey guys, look what we're doing to support you. Look what we're doing to support your mental health and wellness moving toward the future. So that's been very cool to be coordinating and collaborating with a number of departments across the country to bring coaching in specifically to the departments. So couple of different pieces. We also have our coach approach for peer support. So if we have organizations, departments that are like, oh, actually, we have a peer support organization, or we've got a CISM team. That's awesome. That's great. Let's teach them how to use the coach approach to, again, further the conversation, to depthen. That's not a word. Cross that out. Deepen the conversations about what needs to happen in their lives to create that level of satisfaction for them.
And that's a big deal, the peer support piece. And I want to harp on this for a second. Being a member of a peer support group, which I have been for a while, a lot of times, now there's training specifically for peer support. Most people listening to this probably know that there is specific peer support training. You can't just, well, you can run a peer support group, but certification is specific training. And one of the things we do, because we're helpers, in this, at least first responder based peer support, is we want to fix what the person's saying. So the person comes to us and they say, yeah, I've been really upset because this shift went really, and we go right for the shift. We go for that. Okay, this is the problem, right? And that usually isn't what it is. I know with me, when I've been upset about something, when I was on the job, it wasn't what happened on the shift. It was what that shift made me think about that was going on, probably in my personal life, that was causing the problem, or from the past, whatever it may be. And the nice thing with coaching, with the CAPS program, the coaching approach to peer support, is that it sort of allows those peer support members and moderators to hone in on their listening and conversation skills, to maybe pick up on what may be the actual problem, to better help their peer support members.
Huge. Thank you for saying that. That was incredible. Absolutely. Again, layering the modalities.
Yes. Building one on top of the other. And, I think we've all learned stuff at FRC in the last little bit, but I think, going from, just being like, okay, coaching, to being like, okay, so now we're going to kind of come in this angle, and then we're going to kind of come in this angle. I think we've all learned from all the modalities. The modalities will all benefit from coaching. And I really do think it's a hand-in-hand relationship with all these. And, one of the things I always stress with people, and I want to stress here, is that one does not get rid of the other. And several of these modalities may be needed down the road, or before, or even during. And, coaching can really make you, I wouldn't say make, but it really does sort of make you see that benefit that you get when you give yourself to whatever that modality is, where maybe it's just skimming the surface in your therapy. Maybe you can jump in deeper, and that's really what it is, right? Deeper conversations.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And again, like you said, that not necessarily one size fits all, but when we're having conversations about the S word, the stigma word, it's like, well, no, I've got a coach. You have a coach? Why don't you have a coach? Everyone needs a coach. It sounds
Right.
a little cheesy, but it does. It breaks up that, it breaks down some of those walls, especially with that cultural competency piece that I think is so incredibly important too. So yes, very much so.
So how are we finishing off 2022 here at FRC? What's the outlook for the rest of this calendar year look like?
Well, not only the amazing launch of the Resilient Responder podcast, but
Thank you.
yeah, of course, this is exciting. But also, again, just doing what we can to spread the word, to share our mission, to share our goals, to kind of button up here. Again, as someone who came out of 17 years of education background, I have learned so much about business building and the creation of FRC. So I'm excited to kind of button up some things here and tighten the reins a bit, and look at what we have coming down into next year to really flourish in ways that FRC is so capable of. Now that we've created an amazing infrastructure of amazing admin members, I'm really looking forward to this last month of just saying, okay, this is what we're setting up. And January 2023, it is going to be a phenomenal year for FRC in so many ways, because not just getting the word out, but again, the more people that we can support through the accessibility of coaching and what we're trying to what we're accomplishing, that's going to make for the productive year, right? The conversations that are going to have in departments and in one-on-ones, and those are going to be the most impactful for sharing what we're doing with FRC, for bringing FRC and making it accessible for others. So I'm really proud of where we've come, and I'm really looking forward to where we're going.
And I think that's an important piece. Outside, even outside of the business end of things, I think it's important for people to understand that, this isn't just about building a business. This is about, increasing longevity in the first responder world. I mean, you don't got to go very far in a Google search right now to see that fire departments, police departments, EMS departments, it doesn't matter if you're on-call volley squad or a, New York City Fire Department. It is, people just aren't sticking around anymore. People aren't sticking around. They're either dying by their own hands, or they're leaving on medical. or they're just not coming to the job. And there are departments right now that just can't hold on to people. And part of that is, comes back to the leadership and administrator. And
Yes.
if these people can, which we're having conversations with at FRC, right? We're having these department conversations with the current leadership of departments offering these support, and that's what these members need, is support. It's not, they don't need, it's not, pay raises are great, right? More money is always welcome, but that's really not, when I was on the job, I didn't need an extra $5 an hour. I could have used it, but
But
it wasn't the money.
no.
I just wanted my captain, I wanted my chief, I wanted town hall to give a shit that I was putting my life on the line, and my family's well-being on the line, and my mental well-being on the line. It's all about support. And I think, FRC, really getting in touch with these departments on a one-on-one basis like we are, and spreading that word, getting that word out, is the beginning of hopefully what will be the turnaround. Because we're in dire straits right now in the first responder world in all capacities. And I don't
Yep.
think those on the job right now are very happy about that. I don't think anyone who's on the job right now got on being like, cool, in 5 years, I'm not going to want to do this anymore. I mean, I know I didn't. I was planning on getting yanked out of that station at 65 years old, and at 40, I was all done. And
Thank you. Yeah, no, I think that's such an important point, Keith.
yeah.
I've heard stories of first, second, third calls. The fourth call is awful and horrific, and they're like, we can't do this.
Yeah.
Why aren't we having conversations in the academies? As as we're starting, here are some resources that are available, because it's going to be difficult.
Yep.
You're so right.
Yep. It's I gave a presentation a few weeks ago at an EMT class out in Western Mass, about a month ago now, and there was, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed young folk in this room. And I don't like to consider myself an old guy at 44, but I am. And I tell them in the beginning, I'm like, you're going to hear some tough things in the next 2 hours, and it's not to scare you, it's to wake you up. And because these things are going to happen, if you're aware they're going to happen, and that there are resources out there to get better and to stay on the job and to better your family, then you're likely to. And all of what we're doing, I think the FRC is really trying to get out there is so important for the longevity of the first responder culture to keep going.
Yeah. You have to have that culture shift in order for us to keep going.
We have to. And what do I always say, Jen? I have a saying about tradition, don't I? What is it? 175 years of tradition, unimpeded by progress. Us firefighters swear by it. Police aren't too much better, but overall, the mentality towards the job is so true with that saying, and we got to shift that.
Thank you. And you, me, FRC, we are doing that.
People like us are doing it, and it's a very slow process. It's glacially slow on there's actually a glacier on molasses is how slow we're moving with it, but it's happening. It's movement. And I use the tank tread theory with a lot of people, and some people may not have heard this. So a tank tread, in order to go forward, a tank tread has to go backwards. If you ever look at a tank tread, in order for the tank to move forward, that tank tread on the bottom part is moving backwards. And for any forward movement, we have to have some backwards, but there's always forward movement. You have to concentrate on the forward movement.
Yes.
And we're doing that. People like us, people that we network with, people that we're partnering with, people are trying to make a change. And that's the important part. So moving forward, let's get this, let's wrap this up.
Okay.
What are your visions and hopes for FRC going into 2023 and beyond? Like what are some of your hopes?
I think the movement of having, clinical psychiatrists and psychologists and therapists in departments. I know there's been a huge push specifically in the law enforcement world, to have clinicians in their departments, is phenomenal. One of my visions, one of FRC's visions, is to start having coaches be in departments. Through our coach certification, if we can put coaches in all major departments that are specifically there for their department, for their guys, I think that's going to drastically, again, change and influence and impact the environment and culture of our first responder community in phenomenal ways. That's absolutely a long-term, 5-8 year goal, is to have coaches in all major departments across the country.
That is a amazing goal and a great hope to have. And I think the progress is being made for that to happen. And I always say we're dealing with a culture that 3 to 5 years ago barely accepted that therapists were allowed to talk to you. 2 to 3 years ago we were barely able to acknowledge we had feelings and emotions, and here we are with this new resource being like, here guys, use it. But we're getting them to do it, and it's a slow process. Like I said, it's a glacier on molasses, with all avenues of the stigma and everything that we do.
Yes.
So that's great. I hope that all that we're doing, it does make that change. Some of my hopes are that with people utilizing coaching, they're able to bring that back to the different parts of their life, to just, we don't have to live completely in stress and emotionally cut off, and with compassion fatigue especially. A lot of these things can be worked on, and I hope that coaching is part of that movement to do so.
It will.
So moving forward, probably so folks know who are tuning in and watching this, future podcasts where it won't be, we're not going to push the coaching thing every episode, but one of the biggest things we like to stick with is that wellness and resiliency piece, and how important it is to be proactive. And so a lot of the future guests that I have lined up are people who are for that. We have some pretty good names. I'm not gonna give any sneak peeks yet, but we have some pretty good names of people who are national level speakers and presenters, and nationally renowned for what their part is in the first responder world. If anyone listening is interested in being a guest on the podcast here, reach out. You can shoot me an email at keithh@1strespondercoaching.org, and we can set up a meeting to talk about that. I think this was really good, Jen. I think having you on is sort of breaking down that what is coaching, and why is it different than some of the other things, I think might help people with their confusion or maybe even lack of knowledge.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's been an awesome opportunity to share what FRC's, again, mission, goals, values, what all of it is that we are doing here. And so to get it out, get the word out that coaching is this proactive modality to support our first responder community is again vital. And any way we can do that moving forward, I'm honored to do so. So thank you, Keith.
Awesome, Jen. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on today. Any closing remarks before we end our episode?
Not particularly. Just again, I guess reach out. You are not alone, right? Those are some of the phrases. It's okay to not be okay. Just don't plan on staying there long, right? We have you have the resource now. There's no one who watches this or listens to this that can walk away saying, I don't know what to do anymore.
Right.
Here you go. This is what we can do. And we will continue to support our amazing community. We have to be here for each other. So thank you, Keith.
Absolutely. All right, folks, this has been the Resilient Responder podcast. Until next time, be safe, reach out.
Coaching is here now for all first responders and their families. When it comes to the job and the stresses that come with it, we at First Responder Coaching know exactly how it can affect every aspect of your life and the lives of those around you. That's because we are first responders and their families. First responders are well versed in reacting to a situation. It is literally what we do as firefighters, law enforcement, dispatch, and EMS personnel. When trauma enters our lives, we react to it by tucking it down away somewhere in our minds. But we carry it with us and it never really goes away. We need to stop carrying trauma into every aspect of our personal and professional lives. It's time to start having proactive, powerful conversations right now to gain a better balance in the responder's whole life. This is true for their families, especially the spouses. Take that first step in making some of the most important improvements in your life. Visit www.1strespondercoaching.org now to make an appointment to chat with FRC. A coach will reach out, and before you know it, you'll be on your way to living a proactively fit lifestyle.